Welcome to another presentation from the demonstration sites at the University of Washington Herring Center for Inclusive Education, where we're joined today by our guests from Terminal Park Elementary in Auburn School District. The University of Washington acknowledges that all our lives and institutions exist on the unceded lands and waters of the first people of Seattle, the Lushootseed-speaking peoples, the Duwamish, and Coast Salish peoples, who are stewards of the land since time immemorial. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the many indigenous peoples who continue to thrive in this place, alive and strong. First, I'd like to start by giving some context for our partnership. The UW Herring Center has been contracted by OSPI since 2019 and is a member of the Inclusionary Practices Technical Assistance Network, the IPTN. The IPTN is an intentional collective of technical assistance and support providers working together in partnership with OSPI and WestEd to increase inclusionary practices across Washington State. An overview of the focus of the IPTN acknowledges first that systems change occurs incrementally over time. And we all know that this kind of systems change can feel not fast enough, with the urgency to ensure inclusive school experiences for all students, especially students farthest from educational justice. And while many students with disabilities have benefited from Washington's increased investment in inclusionary practices, state data unfortunately shows that some student groups are still disproportionately excluded from general education. Specifically, two groups of students continue to be systematically excluded, and they include students with intellectual and developmental disabilities and Black students eligible for special education services. So the IPTN is committed to addressing these inequities by explicitly targeting systems and practices that limit choice and opportunity for these student groups in particular, by focusing on early learning contexts, supporting inclusive practices, and reducing restraint and eliminating isolation. The Demonstration Sites project at the UW Herring Center for Inclusion continues to focus on highlighting inclusionary practices across the state through partnership with districts and featured schools, which graciously share their journeys with us and invite visitors for transformational visit experiences. And although all the demonstration site partners feature inclusionary practices, we have two categories of demo sites. The first is the continuation of the inclusionary practices, or IP demo sites, which we currently have 11 sites across 10 districts in the state. And in the spring of 2024, we were pleased to welcome 6 new districts with 10 more sites that highlight practices to reduce restraint and eliminate isolation. These are the RREI demo sites. And as we begin, we want to emphasize that each demonstration site is on their own journey. No two visits are the same. Thus, you'll see that high leverage moves align to an individual school and district culture and priority. And for schools to have lasting impacts, district scale and sustainability are critical. In today's presentation, we'll first get to hear about the efforts that Auburn has made in the past several years at a district level, followed by the school team at Terminal Park to talk through more building-specific practices that have helped advance their site on their inclusive journey. I want to now introduce Patrick Mulick, Director of Student Engagement in Auburn, to start us off with an overview of the district-level scaling efforts.
All right. Hello, everyone. It's such a joy to be here today and the opportunity to talk about improving our practices related to reducing restraint and eliminating isolation. Yeah, I'm Patrick Mulick, Director of Student Engagement here in the Auburn School District. I'm going to be sharing an overview of our journey that we've been on in this work. And then you're going to hear the work within a specific building, Terminal Park Elementary, and you're going to hear from Melissa Maxwell. She is one of our behavior intervention specialists in the district that works at Terminal Park, Jackie Rosquita, an occupational therapist, Julie Gregg, the counselor over at Terminal Park, Colleen Barlow, the principal over at Terminal Park, and then Deanna Tompkins, one of our program specialists that has been working over there. So we're excited that you're here, and we're really excited to share our story with you. And our story starts with who we are, an evolving district. We are an extremely diverse district, actually the fastest growing school district in King County for many years now. We have over 17,000 students. About 11.9% of our students access special education services. We have 16 elementary schools, 4 middle schools, 3 high schools, and 1 alternative school. Our community, it just blows my mind to think about this. So 44% of our students live in multilingual households. 11% of our students are new to the country in the past 2 years. And then we have over 111 different languages spoken. So diversity is the name of the game here in Auburn, and that is the center of our work, making sure that everyone has an opportunity to make the best of their time in school and beyond public education. So our mission is in a culture of equity and excellence. We engage, educate, and empower each student for success beyond graduation. We're always thinking about what is this going to look like when our students are no longer with us. So we have 4 foundations related to our strategic plan, and I won't go into each one of these, but when I think about the work related to reducing restraint and eliminating isolation, if you would go through these foundations and highlight what does this apply to with our strategic plan, it would look like this. It's all of it. Every piece of our work related to equity is included in our conversation around reducing restraint and eliminating isolation. This is deeply embedded in our focus here. And at the center of that, we have the filter of utilizing culturally responsive teaching practices. This is the work from Dr. Gary Howard, where we're looking at making sure that relationships are a priority with all of our students. We believe relationships precede learning. We ensure that students are affirmed in their cultural connections. Teachers are personally inviting. Learning environments are physically and culturally inviting. Students are reinforced for academic development. Instructional changes are made to accommodate differences in learners. Classrooms are managed with firm, consistent, and loving guidance, and interaction, stress, collectivity, as well as individuality. So this is at the center of our work, where it starts from at the district level. This work that we've been doing in reducing restraint and eliminating isolation, it's not aside from our work in becoming more inclusive in how we support students. So this is the journey we've been on. This is the data in the 2015-16 school year. You're going to see the schools listed here, and they have the blue indicator next to them. Those are the schools that had our non-categorical self-contained programs. So in most of our schools, we didn't necessarily have a full continuum of services. And you look where we were at going into the 22-23 school year, just about every one of our schools has a full continuum of services, with the exception of one elementary school at the very top, and that's literally just a matter of numbers. And then we have an alternative high school. So we have been shifting our practices and becoming more inclusive. And we do this knowing that inclusive practices and behavior supports, these go hand in hand. When one is going well, the other becomes easier. So when a student has more effective behavioral supports, they're able to be more successful in the general education classroom. But when that inclusive work's happening, when students are affirmed for who they are, they're welcome, their learning is planned individually for them. When students are engaged, we have a significant reduction in behaviors as well. So we see these pieces as going hand in hand. They're not separate from each other. So in that work, we were looking at our numbers related to restraint and isolation. And it was around the 18-19 school year, we started to really look deeply at our numbers related to restraint and isolation. And we became concerned, and at the end of the 19-20 school year, we really became concerned around our usage of this as a district, knowing that even the 19-20 school year wasn't even a full school year of in-person. And we know there's many challenges, there's many layers that go into the use of restraint and isolation. And sometimes the concern isn't just in the numbers that are there. Sometimes the concern is in the numbers that aren't there. How well are we doing as a district in reporting when these things come up? So we knew we needed to make a shift. We didn't know how. We knew things needed to change, but we made the effort to start bringing our minds together and thinking through what moves can we make to get things going. And so, uh, in looking at those numbers, the first leadership moves that we made was we hired our first BCBA. So in special education, we like using acronyms. BCBA, Board Certified Behavior Analyst. Uh, who are specialized in behavior to look at environments, observe students, give teams guidance and how to get to a better place with students in the behavioral realm. They work in many other capacities in the professional world, but we are now finding a way for them in the educational world as hired staff within a district, and it's extremely exciting of the potential of the change that can be made in public education through the utilization of BCBAs. We just started to dive into that ourselves, knowing that we needed to make change, and we committed to change. And knowing that we needed to change, not knowing how we were going to do it, it helped us get going. But there was a point that was really a moment in our journey that gave us the spark that we needed, and it was actually back in October of 2020 when we were doing everything virtual, and there was a virtual conference done by OSPI where there was a conversation around the use of restraint and isolation that really gave some guidance on what we could do as a system to be moving in a different direction. And it was the first time I had seen PD around leading this work and reducing restraint and eliminating isolation that was positive. In the past, I'd seen lots of shaming or how could you do this to kids, but not a here's a path forward. And this sparked our thinking because it gave us ideas for how to move forward. And that's what we did. We continued to look at our numbers. Now, you probably remember during the pandemic, not a lot of kids were in school. So our numbers went down like everybody should have because we had significantly less students in person in schools. But in that time, even when we were working remotely, we knew we needed to do something different. So we brought together a restraint and isolation steering committee within the district and had that group meet on a monthly basis to talk about the many things in the district that influence the use of restraint and isolation. Part of that journey that group went on, that committee went on, was we investigated the different de-escalation trainings that were out there. So just to give you an idea of who was on our restraint and isolation steering committee, we had 6 central office administrators such as myself, 8 building principals or assistant principals, 1 school psych, our BCBA, paraeducator, a behavior intervention specialist, and then 2 special ed teachers and 2 general education teachers. So we wanted to make sure we had great representation within this group. And it wasn't anything fancy. It looked like this, right? It looked like many Zoom calls where we were just having real conversations around what was happening within buildings. But we got to some really great conversations and some incredible points and perspectives. At the end of us meeting for about a year and a half, and talking about our tracking system, who's training, who's getting trained and by who, how often are they getting trained? Is reporting happening when it's needing to happen? Do people actually know what restraint and isolation is? And then again, looking at the different de-escalation programs that are out there. We had many great conversations. At the end of that work, these were the primary recommendations from the committee. We needed, as a district, to increase awareness of practices related to the use of restraint and isolation and the impact that has on kids, not just what's the legal requirements, but what's the ethical pieces that are in play, and what are we doing to students when we put hands on them or put them in a space from which they cannot leave. We recommended we needed to improve training and support to those who needed to be trained. We knew not everyone who needed to be trained was being trained, and so we needed to upgrade that quite a bit. We needed to improve our data tracking system, and then really our FBA and BIPs. We needed to look at our behavior planning practices and how we might be able to improve our work there. So One of the shifts that we made, we did identify a different de-escalation training to use. We had been using one form of training for many years, and we identified for ourselves what was going to work best for us was a program called Safety Care. Safety Care is a 2-day certification de-escalation course, very similar to what you would have time-wise to other courses that are out there. But what we liked about it was it's very ingrained into ABA. It's very consistent with that. And there is a great deal of role playing involved where people not just learn about how to de-escalate or learn how to prevent escalations, but they have to get up and demonstrate those skills one at a time. We really found a greater quality product in rolling this out. And we've heard that from our staff quite a bit, that they prefer this quite a bit more just because of the better skills they have walking away from it. So we've moved forward with that. We did a slow trial phase, and then we fully adopted it and have been moving it on since then. We've trained over 300 individuals in our school districts in safety care, and we've seen a lot of success with that. So we continued the work. Our numbers related to isolation and restraint going into the 21-22 school year. Okay, they were going down. That was showing some signs of hope. It wasn't what it was before the pandemic, but still room for improvement. So what we did beyond that was we hired 3 more BCBAs. So we have a total of 4 board certified behavior analysts, and we hired 12 registered behavior technicians. So those are one-on-ones with that higher skill set that they're actually overseen by the BCBAs. They have a 40-hour training related to ABA. They have to pass a couple tests. And they are a more skilled one-on-one to work with students with our most complex needs. And we found a great deal of success in meeting the needs of students in their schools where they're at with that setup. There's a whole conversation around how to effectively utilize BCBAs and RBTs in public schools. I won't go into that now, and I'm happy to have that conversation at another time, but we've been learning together on how to do this right and how to do it better, and I think our results speak for themselves. One of the things we realized in this process, though, is when we're talking about our staff on the front lines, we have to meet them where they're at. Just like with your students, you have to meet adults where they're at and not where you want them to be. And having that level of expertise, having the BCBAs go out in really complex situations and give coaching, guidance, support to staff where they're at, where the building's at, being patient and understanding, but still guiding them to a better place. Really, in a time when the game has changed, that was a game changer for us, and being able to provide that high level of support. And so our numbers, we continue to look at them. They stayed steady at a lower number in the 22-23 school year. So 85 incidences of isolation, 168 incidents of restraints, still room for improvement. And so beyond that, that's when we officially adopted safety care. And then we rolled out what we call foundations and de-escalation. One of the conversations that we had with training staff related to de-escalation was we found that this practice that I think many districts employ, where you have a group of people where you say they need de-escalation training, and we give them a 2-day, 14-hour certification course on de-escalation, and then everyone else gets nothing. And we didn't think that was right. Not everyone needs to know all of the elements that go into a 14-hour de-escalation training, but if every staff member is going to be able to reach every student, even those with very complex needs, they need to have a foundation and understanding around how to prevent escalations and what to do in those moments when an escalation might come up. And you may not even be leading the de-escalation, but how do you be a supportive member in that? Whether you're a front office staff, you're a recess paraeducator, you're the librarian, you work in the lunchroom, whatever it is, how do we make sure we're equipping more people than just those that get the 14 hours? And so we created a 3.5-hour course called Foundations and De-escalation. We've had over 400 staff take that. And it's not a replacement to the certification course to safety care, but it definitely is a supplement. People have taken both. But for people who just need a background and some basic information on de-escalation to be equipped with, we provided that, and we continue to provide that both live and asynchronously, and that has been a huge support to our growth in the district. The training itself is from this book. We modeled it after the book, Managing the Cycle of Acting Out Behavior in the Classroom. And so in it, we go through the escalation cycle, each of the levels, and identify what does that look like and what can you do at each of those levels. You don't have to wait for the height of the escalation to know that you need to do something different, and what are those different things that you can do. So it went through the different cycles that were there, and then obviously the focus on prevention. The best way to support an escalation is to prevent it from ever happening in the future, and to equip students to be able to manage those stressors that they come across every single day. So beyond that, our leadership moves. We've had heavy communication across the district about what restraint and isolation is and what it isn't, because there's a lot of room for confusion with that, right? Do people know what the state law is related to restraint and isolation? Do people know who is supposed to be trained and who's not? And do we properly document it? That's something that was another piece we moved from. Our old way of documenting restraint and isolation was had a large response effort on those who did it. It was a lot of paperwork to handwrite in, to send in the right places. And we were concerned that this wasn't happening every time restraint or isolation took place. So we moved on to a Google system that has worked out very well for us. That's very user friendly, and it checks all the boxes for all of the reporting requirements in terms of everyone being informed in the timelines that they need to be informed by. So we've seen a lot of success with that in switching to a new data tracking system. So our numbers after that, so the 23-24 school year, we continue to see lower numbers. That isolation looks much better based on what you saw in those first 2 years, the 290 and the 344. The past 3 years, it's been 89, 85, and 90. So those being at a lower number, that looks better. And then our restraint and isolation, it's lower than what it was, but you know what? We're still on a journey. We still have a lot of room for improvement. And actually, as we sit here right now, right, we're a quarter of the way through the school year, and I'm excited to say this, our numbers for isolation for the school year so far, I can count on one hand, right? Which is really, really exciting. And I'm really excited to get to the end of the year and update the graph, update the data on this, but we're on a continual road to improvement. We are not there yet. We still have lots of things to address. We don't have everything figured out, but we know we're no longer at the beginning. And so we want to share our story. We were once at the beginning and we needed a spark. And so we're hoping to provide a little bit of spark thinking and problem solving for you where you're at. Now, the example we're going to give here today, again, is from Terminal Park Elementary. They're going to share their journey as an individual building, what this work has looked like in improving their game. So I'm going to pass it over to Colleen Barlow.
Hi, I am Colleen Barlow, the principal of Terminal Park Elementary School. My team will walk you through some of our practices to help reduce restraint and eliminate isolation. We have had a Tier 1 behavior team for multiple years now, and this year we added a Tier 2 and Tier 3 behavior team. You will hear about our school Zen Den and how we use calming corners and sensory bins in every classroom, which help our students self-regulate. We have an all-school assembly every morning and structured recess opportunities, which will also be part of this presentation. Next slide. Who we are. As you can see, our school is comprised of 624 students with 76% low income, 37% multilingual, 14% students with disabilities, and we also have 3 highly capable classrooms that are mixed with 4th and 5th graders. We serve a diverse population of students. Our highest 2 ethnicity populations are Hispanic and white. I would like to introduce you to Deanna Tompkins.
Next slide, Patrick. So as Patrick was saying, we had some things happen in our district and we became aware of disproportionality in discipline and academics specifically for our historically underserved student groups, our Black students, our multilingual students, and our students with disabilities. And as a result, our organization began to focus on that, and we had an increased increase in resources and funding. We participated as a district in the Inclusionary Practices Project. Student Special Services partnered with our building leaders, and positions were created that focused on inclusive practices and behavior support. I'd also like to add to some of the things that Patrick was mentioning about high leverage moves at the district level. Our Student Special Services Department, probably, I'm going to guess about 8 years ago, were able to advocate and get students with disabilities on the general education classroom rosters, which was a huge piece of ensuring that all students were included in all spaces. They also partnered with our building leaders to build knowledge and to give them opportunities to see what was possible. They took our principals to visit inclusive schools through Urban Collaborative and through the Inclusionary Practices Project. They provided district viewings of 2 documentaries, Paper Tigers and Intelligent Lives. And then, as I mentioned, they created new programs, program specialists focusing on inclusive practices. And they also held 2 inclusionary practices institutes for the entire district. We also need high leverage moves from the building administrators in order for real change to happen. Our principal is responsible for the vision casting, for creating a culture of care, for holding staff accountable and also encouraging staff to hold each other accountable, for prioritizing diversity and family engagement, for building an inclusive building schedule that ensures that all students have access to all things. Our principal, Colleen Barlow, took our staff to McMicken Heights to see an inclusive school in action. And also, Melissa's going to tell you about one of our partnerships that also allowed us to take groups of teachers to schools in Seattle to also observe exemplar schools that were making great gains in being inclusive and providing Tier 1 behavior supports. Our principal also, in order to really make this change, has to put their money where their mouth is. They have to prioritize inclusive practices with their messaging, with their time, and with their funding. And our staff also has to implement high leverage moves. And at Terminal Park, we have co-planning and co-teaching happening in some places. We have staff advocating for the success of all kids. Our staff is eagerly participating in ongoing professional development around inclusive practices. They work very hard to create a culture of care for our students. And they are the ones that not only implement the Tier 1 systems that we put in place, but they also helped create them. And now Melissa's going to talk to you a little bit about our tiered behavior supports.
6 years ago, our Terminal Park, our school, was on fire. Little or no systems in place, tons of behavior issues in and out of class, and little data being monitored. We needed help. We were given the opportunity to work with Belong partners. They helped us establish a strong Tier 1 foundation, teacher support, and student support. This year, we're moving forward and created a Tier 2, Tier 3 team with the help of Character Strong. This team will look at students who need interventions, monitor students who have interventions in place, and we are going to look at if the interventions are effective. I'm going to talk a little bit more about our supports and data. Slide, please. Our Tier 1 supports. I think 2 of our biggest superstars for Tier 1 are our strong data process. We collect data, we track data, we use data to close the communication loop. We are always looking at patterns and trends. We look at data to figure out what problems need to be solved and if there are interventions that need to be put in place. There is a lot of analyzing data and collaboration happening at Terminal Park with our Tier 1 supports. Our other big superstar for Tier 1 is class meetings. Class meetings are a huge part of our daily routine. Class meetings are so meaningful that they are put on the master schedule. Class meetings give students the chance to be an active participant in their community, gives them opportunity to learn, practice, and solve problems in a safe environment. Our class meetings have branched out into specialist classes and bus meetings. Class meetings are a very powerful tool. Okay, next slide, please. In a minute, Julie and Jackie will talk more about Tier 1 supports. I'm going to talk about our Tier 2 supports. One of the most important things to look out on this slide is the Sunday visual. You can see that all tiers start with a strong base. You can add layers as needed, and they can look like more individualized support, maybe higher intensity or frequency. It needs to be noted, though, that just because students have extra layers in first grade doesn't necessarily they'll need it for second grade. And that's the importance of monitoring. And that's where the two-tier team comes in to help monitor that extra support. What kind of interventions do they need, and a timeline? Interventions may need to change or go longer, but we would have to have clear data to make those decisions. And we collect our data through the Universal Screener, SWIS, teacher and parent input. Next slide, please. Some examples of our Tier 2 interventions. There are several on this slide. I'm just going to go over two. The mentor program, this was a huge success. We had over 80 students participate in a very beneficial program. A lot of time and work went into this program. The challenge this year was finding the time to realistically do it. We had to put it on pause. So we are focusing on something similar, but on a smaller scale. So the 5th grade referees. Students will be refereeing second grade soccer. This is a win-win because 5th graders get the opportunity to have a leadership role, and second graders have role models to help them play safely. Tier 2 interventions have given us the ability to be very creative, and our data will show if it is an effective intervention. And so now I'm going to have Jackie talk about more Tier 1 interventions.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so one of the ways that we support our students' abilities to achieve and maintain a state of regulation at school is through calming corners and also our use of our sensory bins. So we know that if students aren't regulated, then they really can't access their ability to attend, to participate, to be a good friend at their best. And so we have some things put in place to help support regulation through the body, through sensory input or experiences that are needed to help the child to regulate. So every single classroom at Terminal Park has a calming corner, and teachers design this space themselves and then teach the expectations to the students at the start of the school year. Calming corners are a safe space inside the classroom. So if a student is having difficulty focusing or staying regulated, they can request a break and then use the space according to how the teacher has instructed the students. And then they can return to engaging in their classroom activities. The space is inside the classroom, which is critical because this allows a child to take a much needed break, but also stay in community. And for those kids who are able to listen while they're in the calming corner, they can still hear the instruction that's happening in the classroom. The calming corner allows the student a chance to step away from their desk and to be in a small, cozy space. And just that in itself is really regulating for a lot of students. And when they're in this space, they can access pre-taught strategies such as breathing activities or visualization. They can use fidgets or get other tactile input that they might need through pillows, stuffed animals, or blankets. And something that we have this year, every single calming corner has a sensory bin that was, these were created through our grant. And so every classroom has access to one of these bins, and they came with a variety of fidgets for students to trial and figure out what works for them, as well as a sequin pillow for some tactile input. Every sensory bin also, very importantly, has a pair of noise canceling headphones. So every student has access to use those. Next slide, please. Okay, another building-wide support to help support regulation of all of our students is our Zen Den. So this space really has its foundations in neuroscience, which tells us that children really need sensation or decrease in some sensation, depending on the child, to help their body to achieve and maintain a regulated state. So in the Zen Den, students can either engage in the kind of sensory input that they need, or they can get a break from the sensory input that's too much for them. And they can do this in the context of play. This space is not used for de-escalation. This is really a proactive support, so that students can either get movement breaks in here throughout the day if they're needed, or for instance, if a student has a time of day that's particularly hard for them, that could be their scheduled time to access the Zen Den, to get their nervous system regulated, feeling safe and ready to engage, and then they can go participate in the activity that tends to be a little bit more difficult for them, so they feel more supported. This is a structured time, it's scheduled, and there is a check-in and a checkout system, so that the student also has a chance to be able to work on some self-awareness skills and self-advocacy, determining how does my body feel, what do I need to help myself to feel my best. Next slide, please. So an important piece of the Zen Den is the adults who are there to monitor what's happening in this space. So while it is very structured and scheduled, the child is allowed free play when they're using this space. So to support this, we have monitors and paraeducators. So monitor is any staff who's able to dedicate time to remain in the room so that they can support students who are able to independently walk from their classroom to the Zen Den and back. And then for students who require more one-on-one assistance, they can go with a paraeducator, or for instance, Melissa or Julie, to the space to access it and back to class with the help that they need. So we've created training so that the adults in the space are aware of how critical that relationship is with the child and how they interact and connect with them in the space. They can provide the check-in and the check-out. And if the child is having a difficulty regulating in the space, that they have some strategies that they can access to try to help them get back to where they need to be and then get back to class. Next slide. So next is Julie Gregg, our school counselor.
Hello, I'm going to talk a bit about our Tier 1 supports that help build community in our building. Every morning, we do a all school-wide meeting in our gym. After kids get breakfast, they come into the gym. Our principal and vice principal run this. We use this time to connect and set the tone for the day. During this time, we do celebrations and grade level competitions for attendance and other successes. Our principal is also teaching all of our students to say good morning in the different languages that we have here at Terminal Park. And then sometimes we use this time to review expectations. At Terminal Park, we also have 5 tiger character traits that we teach. The teachers teach about these traits in the classroom, and we do 1 trait every couple months. And then at the end of those 2 months, we have a all school assembly to celebrate those kids that demonstrated those traits. We also have our Great Tiger Expectations for different areas of our school. And we use golden tickets and Tiger Pride Awards to reinforce those expectations. All of our teachers in our building teach a Belong Partners curriculum called Positive Discipline and Second Step to reinforce those social emotional learning skills. Then as the counselor, I also teach in every classroom throughout the school year, teach things such as problem solving, bullying prevention, and building social skills, mindfulness, and personal safety. And then as a part of our Belong Partners work, we send out a monthly email to our staff with lesson reminders, links, and videos. And one of the monthly focuses that we are really proud of is self-regulation. This started a few years ago because our physical aggression data on recess was really high. So we started making videos with students, and the students loved doing this with us. And so on the next slide, we are going to show you, take a few minutes and show you one of these self-regulation videos. Next slide.
Hey Proud Tigers, we're here today to help you regulate, and I've got my friend
Cortana
and
Vaughn.
And what strategy are we going to use today?
The squeeze.
Okay, so we're gonna regulate using the squeeze for 40 seconds. Here we go. Okay, squeeze your body as tight as you can. Release. Squeeze your body as tight as you can. Release. Okay, now just your fists. Squeeze your fists as tight as you can. Release. Squeeze your fists as tight as you can. Release. Okay, put your hands on your hips. Squeeze your whole body as tight as you can. One big muscle. Release. Okay, hands on your hips. Squeeze your body as tight as you can. Release. Okay, just do your toes. Squeeze your toes as tight as you can. Release. Good job. One more time. Squeeze your toes as tight as you can. And release. Awesome. We hope you try our strategy.
Bye. Bye.
Okay, next slide. Okay, so that was one of our monthly focuses. We also have done a focus area on like mistakes and repairs, and using the 2x10 strategy for relationship building. And then new to us this year, because in looking at our recess behavior data, physical aggression is still high. So we are doing new structured recess activities to work on this. And this is still a work in progress for us, but we're doing music Mondays, tournament Tuesdays, walking Wednesdays, Tiger Den Thursdays, and free choice with music on Fridays. So I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Barlow to finish us up. Next slide.
We're really proud of the work we've done and where we're going. When people come to our building, the first thing they notice is the pictures of every student and staff member lining our hallways, showing our diverse population with the message, "You belong here." We have increased our family and community engagement opportunities because we need every community member to support the work we're doing. Our class meetings foster a sense of community where students feel comfortable voicing concerns, problem solving, and celebrating students and classroom successes. Our calming corners in every classroom allow students to self-regulate, and our Tier 1 behavior team is passionate about supporting every student that walks through our door, no matter what their need is. The next steps for us include to continue to monitor and adjust building-wide inclusive practices, continue to provide opportunities for professional development in inclusive practices, belonging, social emotional learning, and universal design for learning to better meet the needs of our learners. We always have room to grow. We are developing and refining our structured recess activities to give students opportunities to learn new games, connect with friends, and just have fun and be safe. Time to be kids. And finally, our newly developed Tier 2 and Tier 3 behavior support team will implement and monitor the effectiveness of our tiered supports. We look forward to sharing our school systems with visitors who wish to learn more. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much to everybody who shared today, from the folks from Terminal Park Elementary and the Auburn School District. We are grateful to learn from your experiences and your inclusion journey and efforts to reduce restraint and eliminate isolation. To learn more about Terminal Park and Auburn School District, please visit their links through the demonstration site's webpage, and also see the Inclusionary Practices Resources page for more artifacts and tip sheets. Thanks, everybody.